I was not expecting that cliffhanger after such a episode that really was like a major turning point in Rudy's character. For the first time, even though it was a bit of help from the best puppy I've seen in anime in some time, he very much acted like a hero and did something that wasn't necessarily to benefit him. It started off as being like, okay, they'll owe me one, to becoming like, you know what, I don't want to be a scumbag and maybe I want to be more like Rudyard. Having that type of growth to then ending with Eris's grandfather not just like sentenced to death, like he actually died in this episode. Because when they started setting that up, you know, he's on his knees, he's basically begging for his life. Well, he's not begging for his life, but it's the situation that you think, okay, next week something will come up. I doubt he's gonna die. And they just kind of pull away and you see his head fall. And I'm like, holy shit. You go from this girl being so happy, ready to tell her grandfather these great stories someday, to then just killing him and having these scumbags just laugh like maniacs. Next week and the remaining episodes can't come soon enough. I mean, I think what really got me the most about that death was that in this episode, there's a moment where the slaver, who, honestly not that surprising, but has some surprising elements to it, that the person who was behind it just so happened to be the person who helped them across the sea. He mentions how, like, there's some weird people with, like, fetishes that they like to buy up the beast children, and he thinks about the grandfather being like, wait, could it be? And then they kill him in this episode. Like, they just really, they did that well. They did it unexpectedly, and now this is the second time this week, and this weekend, that something happened so abruptly, but it works so effectively, and it's really impressive for that. I mean, I mentioned it last week how when they ultimately saved the people who were being enslaved, I mentioned if this isn't what they're supposed to do, this man's going to be very pissed off. So my mind was there that he could be involved in this situation, but I wasn't expecting that he was using Rudy and company this entire time to distract so that they could capture far more than what they might end up releasing. That was something that definitely got me, because this is such an impressive and important moment for Rudy's character. Because he could have ran away when everything was engulfed in flames, and he decided it would, one, he doesn't want to see a bunch of innocent people, especially with how brutal it is, die, but two, he can gain something out of it. So he conjures the rain and things start turning. But the moment where he actually decides to step up, which it's not like he did it of his own free will there 100% by himself. He needed a good push from the dog. But it still is impressive because he was about to let this man walk away because, you know, he's not Rudyard. He admits it in this episode. He can't, from the goodness of his heart, just help someone because they're in need, unless he's going to gain something out of it and he guaranteed can win it, right? And if he's not guaranteed that he'll win, the prize better be worth it. And when the dog comes in and it kind of snaps him to and then he attacks back, it really was a sign that Rudy's character is slowly but surely changing. And that's the type of growth that separates your run-of-the-mill fantasy show to something with depth and realism. Because Rudy was not a great person before he started up in this world. And he's definitely had very questionable actions throughout this run. But we're starting to see that progression in his change, in that his environment is definitely shaping him into being slightly better than he once was, and who knows how much better he'll be by the time the anime wraps up, right? So it's nice to see that he did something good, and, you know, the moment where he was being praised, he blushed, he lit up, because this was something that actually mattered to him, and those generic pleasure fantasies that he has in his mind don't compare to something like genuine thanks, because not only did you save our lives, you saved the innocence of our children. And that was a really impressive moment. I mean, they kick off the episode, which I thought was just another Rudy fantasy, with him hanging out butt-ass naked, talking about how he has this luxury apartment. I was, like, really confused, because, like, I completely glossed over the fact that he kind of got kidnapped last week. So when it pulls away and he's just very much in hell, I thought that was a great comedic choice to kick off the episode. Once again, using the opening to lay out some scenery. I've constantly mentioned it over the reviews that I think world building is some of the best I've seen because of how they handle it. It's never just a character says something and that's how it reveals information. The opening, as an example, in this week's episode, it shows us their landscape, where they're living, how they're living. Simple moments like a fisherman in a boat having these giant fish. We don't need characters explaining the size, the magnitude, what their species of fish are. No. All we need is a visual representation of a character next to that pile, and we get a good idea of the type of creatures that are living in that ocean. It's really, really effective and something you don't see a lot of shows do. But when they do happen, I mean, it's hard to mess up because it just really works and kind of naturally builds the foundation of the world by itself. But it's interesting because, like, this man was very much in a pretty shitty situation. He could open the lock at any point, but how's he going to get down? And is he going to be able to fight his way to freedom? Does he want to fight his way to freedom? He was pretty much just waiting for his crew, and it was odd that it took a week's time for them to eventually meet back up, and then ultimately we see why that was. But for him, it was definitely a worrisome sign. So when things started to go ablaze after meeting his new best friend, which I hope this dude sticks around. I really hope we get to see more of him. The guy, like, there was some jokes I was like, wow, Rudy, what's going on in that cage? To like realizing that he's giving him a massage. But just the idea of like calling him boss and being like, okay, this is why you're the boss. I love that type of dynamic. Someone who's very much just like a yes man, but you know, he understands that the person that he's kind of following or just kind of going with the flow with is someone that probably understands the situation better than himself, so he'd rather follow than lead, sort of a deal. And it was really cool because he wasn't just someone standing by doing nothing. He was definitely helping where he could, but he also was waiting for those orders or the plan that he was hoping Rudy would make the right one so that his own consciousness wouldn't feel guilty when he goes to sleep in the next night. Like, Jobless Reincarnation is just such a good show. The action when they were fighting at the end, especially because we learned that it's not just your average slaver, he's definitely a very skilled warrior, someone who normally you wouldn't be able to defeat, and the way he moved and the way he slashed and diced, you could tell he was a step above your average swordsman, even ignoring that he was a slaver, because most slavers probably aren't the biggest of warriors, they're just some people with some muscle and a sword. But ultimately, this man felt like he could even give Rudyard maybe a run for his money in terms of combat. It really felt like he was a powerful warrior. So it's nice that it wasn't just Rudy doing it himself. It was a combination of efforts, people taking blows, literally having a dog maul your arm to the overall magic that he was using. I actually was thinking that it was going to be like a thunderstrike that what was going to destroy him, given that they started this fight and this kind of like situation in the pouring rain. But the idea of just this giant explosion, and I really love the kind of like you see his face and you see Rudy's face and it just lights up like a giant bomb went off. I think that's absolutely what that scumbag deserved. I was expecting him to be a more relevant character than just that, given that I didn't think he was a good guy, but I thought he would be relevant past episode 3 or 4 of part 2. And instead, he got obliterated, but rightfully so. I'm hoping that dog's gonna stick by though, because if there's one character who could join for sure, it's gotta be that puppy. That puppy loves Rudy, and they understand now it's a misunderstanding. So I'm interested to see if it's going to be like a familiar dynamic where he can summon the dog or something like that, which would be rather cool. But incredible episode, probably my favorite Rudy moment out of the 14 so far. Incredible growth. It's subtle, but it's noticeable, and it's going to be interesting to see when we do probably get that full adaptation, because it feels like we're building up to that, what Rudy will look like by the time it ends. I think there's going to be a really great character arc, and we've already had multiple points really pointing to that. He's still very questionable, but that's realistic given how he started out, right? Let me know your thoughts and feelings though down below, your favorite moment, and where do you think it's going to go next week after that cliffhanger? Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time everyone, please take care and have a good one.